It's strange how betrayal doesn't always announce itself with screaming or slamming doors. Sometimes, it arrives wrapped in laughter, your wife's laughter, while you're standing 5 feet away, holding a half-finished drink and pretending you didn't hear the punchline that just broke something inside you. That's how it began. Or at least, that's the moment everything changed. We were at a rooftop lounge in Seattle, the kind with string lights, overpriced charcuterie boards, and bartenders with sleeve tattoos and zero personality. It was Megan's best friend Hannah's birthday, and I had promised to be social, to smile more. As Megan had put it before we left the house, I did. I smiled when I was introduced to her coworkers I'd never met. I smiled through 3 separate conversations about someone's trip to Portugal. I smiled when Megan ordered her 3rd drink and started referring to me as her introvert husband who secretly hates parties. But what I didn't expect, what I couldn't have seen coming, was the moment she turned to the group and, with a smirk, said, "Andrew? Oh, he's just being his usual boring self." They laughed. God, they laughed. Even the guy with the man bun who hadn't spoken all night snorted into his IPA. And Megan? She beamed like she'd just won something. She looked right at me after she said it, not with affection, but with that look she gets when she's showing off. Like I'm a prop she brought along to make herself look better. I wasn't angry in that moment. I wasn't embarrassed either. What I felt was colder than that. Numb. Like something had gone silent inside my chest. So, I did something small, something almost meaningless in the eyes of everyone around me. But to me, it wasn't. I took off my ring. The matching silver ring we had picked out together on Whidbey Island, in that little artisan shop by the ferry dock. The one she said was a symbol of how we don't need traditions to mean forever. I remember how serious she'd been when she said that, how she had slipped it onto my finger and whispered that it wasn't just jewelry, it was a contract between souls. Now, it was a prop in a performance I hadn't agreed to be part of. I slipped it into my pocket without a word. She didn't notice. A few minutes later, we moved to the bar. Megan clung to my arm, suddenly affectionate, the kind of over-affection that only shows up when someone's been drinking or trying to make a point. She leaned in and whispered that I needed to loosen up, that everyone thought I was being dramatic, and that if I didn't want to come to parties, I should just say so. I didn't respond. As she pulled away to fix her lip gloss, she dropped her clutch. The contents spilled across the bar stool and the floor. A handful of receipts, a tube of lipstick, a tiny perfume bottle, and something that hit the floor with a dull smack. I reached down and picked it up. A hotel key card. Not just any hotel. The Andorra Lakeside, the boutique hotel on Lake Union with spa suites, skyline views, and those romance packages they advertise on Instagram. I recognized the branding immediately because Megan had once mentioned wanting to stay there someday, when we feel like splurging. I turned the card over. Tucked behind it were 2 breakfast vouchers. I looked at them, then at her. She froze for half a second, not long enough for anyone else to catch it. But I saw it. Her fingers twitched. Her smile faltered just barely. Then she laughed. "Oh my God," she said, snatching the items out of my hand with practiced ease. "Relax, babe. It's a joke." Hannah put it in my bag. We were doing that stupid who's most likely to game earlier and someone said I was the most likely to sneak off to a hotel. It's not serious. A few of her friends overheard and chuckled along with her. One of them, I think his name was Connor, raised his glass and said, "Well, if anyone could get away with it, it's Megan." More laughter. I nodded and smiled. I even chuckled like I believed it. But I didn't. Because here's the thing, Megan doesn't like games like that. She hates who's most likely to, and anything else that involves calling people out. I've seen her get uncomfortable during harmless icebreakers. And Hannah? She's the kind of person who books a massage a month in advance and double-checks the Yelp reviews. The idea of her slipping a real hotel key into someone's bag as a joke felt like a stretch. And the breakfast vouchers? No one jokes that hard. Not even Hannah. Megan's tone shifted quickly after that. She leaned in close to me and whispered, "Don't start. Seriously. Don't ruin tonight." I didn't say a word. I just watched as she smiled brightly at the group again and pivoted the conversation to something safe. Everyone moved on or pretended to. I didn't, because something about the way she reacted, the panic that flashed across her face, the speed of the cover-up, the way she deflected by accusing me of jealousy. It all felt too familiar. The subtle shifting of blame, the strategic laughter, the use of the group as a shield. It wasn't the first time I'd seen her do that, but it was the first time I realized just how good she'd become at it. I went to the restroom shortly after, not because I needed to, but because I needed a moment to breathe. Inside the bathroom, I stood in front of the mirror, stared at my reflection, and pulled the ring from my pocket again. I turned it over in my palm. Felt cold, heavier than it should have, like it carried the weight of everything unspoken between us. I remembered the early days, the long walks around Green Lake, the first apartment with the creaky floorboards, how she used to leave notes in my lunch when I had a tough week. I remembered how she cried during our first real fight. Not because she was upset, but because she was afraid I didn't want to fix things. And now she was making jokes at my expense for people who barely knew me. When I returned to the table, Megan was already deep in another story, this time about a crazy client she once had who asked to schedule a design consult at midnight. She caught my eye mid-sentence, smiled, and reached for my hand across the table. I let her hold it, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to see if she'd noticed the missing ring. She didn't, or maybe she did, and she just chose not to say anything. Later, when we were leaving the party, she leaned into me, tipsy and smug, and said, "See, that wasn't so bad, was it?" I didn't answer. I just opened the car door for her, slipped into the driver's seat, and kept my hands on the wheel the whole ride home. The ring stayed in my pocket. So did the questions. After that night at the rooftop, something in me shifted. Quietly, permanently. I didn't confront her again. I didn't bring up the hotel key or the breakfast vouchers. I didn't ask why she thought it was funny to humiliate me in front of a crowd, or why she dodged the question so fast it could have given someone whiplash. I didn't say anything because what would be the point? When someone's already turning the mirror around to blame you for making things awkward, you learn to keep your mouth shut. But silence doesn't mean peace. It just means war has gone underground. The days that followed weren't loud. They weren't dramatic. They were quiet in a way that made me start paying attention to everything I'd overlooked. And once I started looking, I couldn't stop. It began with the ring, or rather, the absence of it. 2 days after the party, I noticed Megan wasn't wearing hers either. I asked her about it casually, while she was standing at the kitchen counter eating Greek yogurt straight from the tub. She barely glanced up. "Oh, I left it in the bathroom upstairs. It didn't go with what I wore today. Too much silver. That was it. Not, I'll go grab it. Not, oops, forgot." Just a shrug and a reason that sounded more like wardrobe coordination than emotional detachment. That ring had once been a stand-in for vows. Now it was just optional. I nodded, said nothing, but it was the first click in the lock. The next came a few days later. I walked into the home office just as Megan was closing her laptop. Fast. Not casually shutting it, not putting it to sleep, but snapping it closed like it was hiding state secrets. Her expression shifted like someone had flipped a switch, wide eyes, fake calm, smile already forming. "Hey, didn't hear you coming down," she said, voice just a touch too upbeat. I asked what she was working on. She said client invoices. Then she changed the subject before I could even process it. Except, Megan doesn't handle invoices. That's what her company's internal system is for. I'd helped her set it up. She once bragged that her team uses an automated platform so she could stop babysitting spreadsheets. Click. Then there were the messages. I wasn't snooping, not exactly, but she was careless. Notifications would pop up on her phone. Names I didn't recognize, emojis next to them, messages that disappeared when I glanced over. One of them was saved under a contact named Jules B. I asked her who Jules was. She said it was an old college friend. I asked what the B stood for. She blinked once, then laughed. "Wow, jealous much?" Deflection. Classic. Click. And then the client calls. Late ones. I'd be halfway through brushing my teeth and hear her on the phone in the guest room with the door closed. "He's asking for too much too fast," she'd say. Or, "We'll need to meet in person to sort this out." Once I heard her giggle. Not a polite chuckle. A giggle, the kind she hadn't used with me in years. Another time, I walked past the door and caught the tail end of something that sounded like, "I can't talk now, he's home." Click. She also started taking more Ubers. Megan usually preferred driving. She liked control. She liked parking in specific spots. She liked blasting 90s music without worrying about drivers judging her playlist. But lately, she was too tired to drive, or already had a glass of wine. Reasons that made sense on the surface. But then I noticed the destinations. Neighborhoods nowhere near her office. A bakery in Ballard. A condo near Fremont. A parking lot by the lake. I asked once, just once, what she was doing in North Capitol Hill when she said she was working in South Lake Union. "Oh, you know," she said, swiping on lip balm. "Client's house. They wanted to show me their space. They've got this crazy rooftop garden. You'd love it." No address. No names. Just another story that didn't quite stick. Click. There were also cash withdrawals. We had a system. Most of our expenses went on cards, we liked the points, and we tracked spending together. But I started seeing ATM transactions from her personal account. Always $200, sometimes $300. Withdrawn from random spots. A gas station in Kirkland. A grocery store in Magnolia. When I asked her about it, she laughed again. "God, Andrew. Why are you suddenly so interested in my money? Are we doing audits now?" Not an answer. Just a wall. Click. I began noticing her smell. Not perfume. Not lotion. Something else. Cologne. Twice. Maybe 3 times. She came home with the scent of men's cologne clinging faintly to her scarf or jacket. It wasn't overpowering, but it was there. Sharp, unfamiliar, the kind of scent that doesn't transfer from an elevator ride or a handshake. Once, I leaned in to kiss her hello and she pulled back quickly. "Sorry," she said. "I'm sweaty." But she wasn't. Click. Then there was the lipstick. Bright red. Not Megan's usual shade. I found it rolling around in the passenger side footwell of our car when I dropped my keys. I held it up when she came outside. "This yours?" She looked at it like it was radioactive. "Must be Hannah's. She borrowed my car last week. Remember?" She hadn't. I remembered because I'd taken the car in for service the day she claimed Hannah had it. Click. Even the gifts started to feel strange. For our anniversary in May, she gave me an Omega watch. One I'd admired in a magazine once, months ago. It was beautiful, sleek, way out of our usual price range. I thanked her. She smiled and said, "You deserve something nice." But later, when I went to check our joint account, there was no charge. No payments on her card either. So where did it come from? Click. The final nudge, the one that pulled the pattern into sharp focus, came from her friends. Or rather, their stories. She'd say she was at dinner with Alyssa. Alyssa would post a story that night from her apartment, tagging her dog curled up on her couch. Megan would say she and Jess went out for drinks. But Jess's location tag would show her in Bellevue with her fiancé. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask. I just watched, learned, clicked. Because when you start collecting puzzle pieces, you stop trying to explain them away. You just wait until they all start to fit. And slowly, painfully, they did. Late nights, missing rings, vague explanations, physical distance, emotional withdrawal, new outfits, new perfume, new lies wrapped in casual tones. It wasn't about one moment. It was about the pattern. It was always the pattern. A breadcrumb trail that led me here, to the quiet certainty that the person sleeping next to me each night had already left the room long ago. Suspicion is a strange kind of gravity. It pulls at you quietly, tightening its grip 1 ounce at a time until you're no longer standing on solid ground. By the time Saturday rolled around, I'd been living in that weight for weeks. The ring, the laptop, the coded messages, the cash withdrawals. Each piece sat heavy in my pocket like stones. But stones are still abstract. They can be ignored, rationalized, rearranged. What I didn't have yet was a single, undeniable fact. I got it that weekend. Megan had said she was staying at a friend's place, Melissa's, after some girls' wine night. The way she said it was too rehearsed, like a line she'd practiced. She tossed it out at breakfast while scrolling her phone, not looking at me, her nails tapping the screen. Melissa's got this cute little patio, she said. We'll probably just drink wine and crash there. Don't wait up. The phrase hit me, don't wait up. She'd started using it like punctuation lately. At first it sounded casual, even affectionate, but now it felt like a door closing in my face. I nodded and sipped my coffee, pretending I wasn't already planning my evening. That afternoon, while she showered, I checked the car tracker I'd installed 2 weeks earlier. I hated that I'd done it. I told myself it was temporary, just until my head stopped spinning. But when her location pinged an hour after she'd left for Melissa's and showed her on the opposite side of town, my stomach turned. Lake Union, the same boutique hotel whose keycard had fallen out of her clutch. I sat in the driveway for a full minute, engine running, palms sweating. Part of me wanted to slam the laptop shut, pretend I hadn't seen it. Another part, the part that still believed maybe this was all a misunderstanding, wanted to call her right then, demand an explanation, give her a chance to fix it before it was too late. But the quiet, colder part of me, the part that had been quietly adding up the clicks, knew this was it. I drove. Seattle traffic on a Saturday evening should have slowed me down, but it felt like the cars parted for me. My focus tunneled. I barely remember the lights, the bridges, the radio. All I remember is the address on the screen and the way my heartbeat matched the turn signal. I parked a block away from the Andorra Lakeside Hotel, my car angled between a delivery van and a line of trees. From there, I had a clear view of the main entrance. The building glowed warm against the dark water, its glass doors reflecting the neon sign. Couples were going in and out, laughing, wheeling luggage, holding hands. It would have looked like any other busy night at a nice hotel if not for the way my hands were trembling against the steering wheel. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I almost convinced myself to leave. Then a taxi pulled up. The door opened and Megan stepped out. I'd never seen that dress before. A deep red, fitted, the kind she used to wear back when we were dating and she wanted to make an entrance. Her hair was pinned back loosely, like she'd let someone else arrange it. Her laugh floated through the air as she leaned on the shoulder of the man stepping out after her. It was the same man from the last corporate party. I remembered him instantly because he'd been the only one she'd danced with that night. They'd been close on the dance floor, bodies moving in rhythm, her smile brighter than I'd seen it in months. At the time, she'd brushed it off as networking and teased me for looking so serious. Now he was right here, opening his wallet at the reception desk, his hand resting on the small of her back like it had always belonged there. I stayed in the car at first, my breath fogging the window. Then I stepped out, moving slowly, my shoes crunching against the gravel as I crossed to the hotel's outdoor seating area. From there I could see them clearly through the glass. They weren't rushing. They weren't hiding. He handed over his credit card. She slipped an arm around his waist. The clerk slid 2 key cards across the counter. They both picked one up. 1 room, 2 keys. They moved toward the elevator, still talking, still close. Her hand trailed down his arm, and he leaned in to say something that made her laugh softly. She tilted her face toward him, and he kissed her. It wasn't a peck. It wasn't a mistake. It was slow, practiced, public. I felt my chest tighten. My first instinct was to burst through the lobby, shout her name, demand to know how she could do this. But another part of me, the part that had been bracing for this exact moment, held me back. If I lost it now, the story would become about my anger instead of her betrayal. So I stayed where I was, watching. They disappeared into the elevator. The doors closed. And just like that, there was no more maybe. No more benefit of the doubt. No more half-stories or deflections. It was real. I walked into the hotel lobby bar instead of the front desk. My body felt oddly calm, as though every nerve had been waiting for this confirmation. I ordered a club soda from the bartender and reached into my pocket. The ring was still there. The silver band that had been my anchor, now just a piece of metal. I set it on a napkin, staring at it for a long moment. Then I took out a small box I'd been carrying. A box Megan had given me years ago when we'd first exchanged the rings. I placed the ring inside, closed the lid. When the bartender returned, I slid the box toward him. When a woman named Megan Clark comes down from one of the rooms later, I said quietly, "Please give this to her." He looked at me, puzzled, but nodded. "Sure thing." I thanked him and left some cash under the glass. Before I walked out, I turned once more toward the elevator bank. A family with suitcases was stepping inside. 2 businessmen were checking in. Life continued around me like nothing had happened. But something had. I stepped out into the cool night air and stood near the exit, partly hidden behind a column. The lake shimmered under the lights. My car was a few yards away, but I didn't move. 10 minutes later, I saw her. She was at the front desk again, speaking quickly to the clerk, her expression tight. He reached under the counter and handed her the box. She opened it right there, her face draining of color as she saw what was inside. Her head whipped around, scanning the lobby. Her eyes found me. For a second, neither of us moved. I turned, opened the door, and walked out. No shouting, no scene. Just the sound of my shoes against the pavement and the weight of the night settling over me. Behind me, the lobby doors hissed shut. The ring was gone. The doubt was gone. Only the truth remained. And with it, the first flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. I could have confronted her. I could have waited in the lobby, sat at the bar long enough to catch them on their way down, watched them pretend not to panic, heard the stammered lies they would scrape together like broken glass. But I didn't. I didn't want rage. I didn't want an audience. I didn't want her words. Not anymore. I wanted her to see it. I wanted her to understand that I knew, that she had crossed the line she always said she never would, and that I wasn't going to fight her to fix what she broke. I was done. Not screaming, not swearing, just done. So I waited in the shadows by the exit, just outside the line of sight, close enough to see the front desk, far enough that she wouldn't spot me right away. I watched the reflection in the glass doors, the flicker of her red dress as she stepped off the elevator alone. She didn't look relaxed anymore. She looked tense, off balance. She went to the desk, said something to the clerk. He reached under the counter. That's when he gave her the box. I saw her expression change the moment she opened it. Her shoulders stiffened. She stared down at the ring inside like it was radioactive, like it burned. Then her eyes started scanning the room, looking, hunting. She found me in the reflection first. Then she turned and saw me standing there in real time. Not angry, not pacing, just watching. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. I turned my back to her, pushed through the glass doors, and walked into the night. I didn't look over my shoulder. I didn't wait to see if she would follow. I just kept moving, one foot after the other, down the sidewalk toward my car. The air was cool and sharp against my skin, but I barely felt it. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. I'd always wondered what this moment would feel like. The moment you catch someone you trusted completely, fully, in a lie that dismantles everything. I thought I'd feel anger, maybe heartbreak. But what I felt most was a strange kind of stillness. Like something inside me had gone quiet after months of screaming. The car door clicked open. I slid into the driver's seat, pulled the door shut behind me, and stared out at the hotel for a few long seconds. A couple walked by on the sidewalk, laughing, holding hands. Life moved forward without asking if you were ready. I wasn't, but I was moving anyway. The drive home was silent. No music, no podcasts, just the soft hum of the engine and the faint tap of the turn signal when I changed lanes. My mind wasn't racing, it was organizing, filing things away, taking all the fragments and putting them into labeled drawers: before, after, now. When I got home, I didn't even turn on the lights. I dropped my keys in the dish, took off my jacket, and sat at the edge of the couch staring into the dark. The house smelled like her shampoo, faint traces of perfume lingering in the hallway. I didn't hate it. I didn't miss it. I just noticed it. There was nothing left to say. I had no speech prepared, no final monologue waiting in my chest. All the questions I used to have: why her? Why him? Why lie for so long? They didn't matter now. She had answered them not in words but in actions, in choices, in the way she kissed him in public like she'd never kissed me in private anymore. I slept in the guest room that night. Not because I thought she would come home, I was pretty sure she wouldn't, but because I didn't want to sleep somewhere that smelled like her. I left the lights off, pulled the door shut, and lay there staring at the ceiling, eyes dry, body stiff, mind quiet. I woke before sunrise. The first thing I did was make a list. I opened my laptop and typed it out in a blank document. Not just names and dates, but tasks, actions. A checklist for the next 24 hours, not for revenge, but for clarity. Freeze joint accounts. Change shared passwords. Cancel shared subscriptions. Contact landlord about lease adjustment. Box her things. Closet, bathroom, desk. Set up secure cloud folder for evidence. Draft message to her father. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about removing her from the framework of my life. If she wanted a different future, she could have it, just not from inside mine. I worked methodically. I called the bank first, then the utilities, then the landlord. I asked to have my name moved to sole occupancy, effective immediately. I offered to pay any transitional fees. No arguments, just business. Next, I changed every shared password: Netflix, Spotify, the grocery app, even the smart thermostat. I wasn't angry while I did it, just focused, precise. It felt less like cutting someone out and more like removing a virus from a machine that still had a chance to function. After that, I boxed her things. I didn't throw anything. I didn't break anything. I just moved through the house like a quiet eraser. Every trace of her, her chargers, her books, her coffee mugs, went into a labeled container. Bathroom drawers were wiped clean. Closet hangers emptied. Every drawer shut with a soft click. I found the lipstick in the car again and put it in the box too. Maybe she'd need it, or maybe it would remind her of what she'd cost herself. I stacked the boxes by the front door and wrote her name on each one. Megan Clark, not Megan Miller. Then I sat at the desk and opened a new document. Not for her father. Thomas Clark wasn't just my father-in-law. He was also someone I'd worked with professionally, someone who once told me he respected how I kept emotion out of business. He was the kind of man who valued data, not drama. So I gave him data, the hotel address, the date and timestamps, a photo of the boutique keycard, the location logs from the car, *TS of the financial activity. I even included the metadata from the photos I took when I watched her through the hotel glass. No commentary, no accusations, just the facts neatly organized with a note at the top. Thomas, I thought you'd want to see this. Make of it what you will. Andrew. I sent it from my business email, not my personal one. I wanted him to know I was approaching this with the same level of professionalism we had always shared. By noon, the boxes were still untouched. Megan hadn't called. She hadn't texted. Maybe she was still with him. Maybe she was trying to figure out what to say. But silence, as I'd learned, is a kind of confession too. And I was done waiting for words. The day after the hotel, I didn't feel grief. Not in the way people expect it. There were no tears, no shouting into pillows, no pacing the floor in some dramatic spiral of disbelief. What I felt was clinical. Cold, maybe, but also clear. The kind of clarity that shows up when the fog finally lifts, and you're standing alone in a burned-down house, holding the only bucket of water left, but realizing there's no point in pouring it. By 7 a.m., I was already dressed, coffee in hand, going over the checklist again like I was prepping for a meeting. Freeze accounts, done. Change passwords, done. Notify landlord, confirmed. Box her belongings, stacked by the front door. Digital folder of evidence. Uploaded, encrypted. Message to Thomas. Sent. That last one weighed the heaviest. I didn't know how he'd respond, or if he would at all. He wasn't just Megan's father, he was my former mentor. We'd collaborated on projects together, had dinner more times than I could count. He once told me he saw me as the son who showed up on time and asked the right questions. That line echoed in my head as I hit send the night before. I wasn't trying to use him as leverage. I just wanted him to know who his daughter had really become, not out of spite but out of respect for the man I thought he was. By midday, I'd received a reply. Understood. I'll be in touch. T. Nothing more. Nothing less. But the tone was unmistakable. He believed me. I spent the rest of the day wiping the house clean. Not physically, that had been done, but digitally, emotionally. I scrolled through photos on my phone, deleting the ones that didn't sting anymore, just left a bad taste. I backed up the wedding album out of obligation, then removed it from my daily cloud. Her playlists, deleted. Shared calendar events, gone. Even the silly couple's grocery list app we used, wiped. Megan hadn't come home. She hadn't texted, hadn't called. I wasn't surprised. I imagined she'd either hold up with him, whoever he was, or she was waiting for some grand apology moment, hoping I'd reach out first so she could still control the narrative. But this wasn't a TV show. There wouldn't be a dramatic reunion. No, we need to talk over wine and tears. She'd already said everything that mattered with her actions. So I did something she didn't expect. I scheduled a courier. I wasn't going to leave her boxes in the hallway like some passive-aggressive roommate. I hired a local service to come pick them up and deliver them to her office the next morning. Discreetly, professionally. I even included a short note inside the top box. Your belongings. Delivered as promised. No hard feelings. Please forward any future communication through counsel. Andrew. No threats. No begging. Just a boundary, clean and precise. By the next day, she'd received them. I knew because she texted me one word. Seriously. I didn't respond. A few hours later, she tried again. Can we talk? Just 5 minutes. Still nothing from me. Then came the voicemail. Her voice, soft, apologetic, weaving half-truths into full sentences. Andrew, I know how this looks, and I get that you're hurt, but you're not seeing the full picture. That night wasn't what you think. I made a mistake, okay? But you're acting like we were perfect and then suddenly I wrecked it. That's not fair. Can we please just talk? The old me, the me from 6 months ago, would have felt something, would have hesitated. But the man listening to that message wasn't confused anymore. He was finished. Later that afternoon, I received another message. This one not from her, but from someone I never expected to hear from. Alyssa, one of Megan's close friends. Her message was blunt. I didn't want to get involved, but I figured you should know you're not crazy. We all knew something was off for a while. Megan wasn't exactly subtle. I'm sorry it came to this. If you need anything, let me know. That was the moment the illusion of Megan's social web collapsed. The people who once laughed at her jokes, who used to give me side eyes at parties like I was dragging her down, now they were peeling away, one by one. The next day, I heard from Thomas again. This time, he didn't message. He called. I let it ring twice before answering. His voice was calm, but heavier than usual. The kind of tone you only hear from someone watching their foundation crack. I've reviewed everything, he said. I said nothing. I had no idea, he added. I truly didn't. Still, I stayed silent. Then, I'd like to talk business if you're willing. That caught me off guard. He explained that he'd been thinking about restructuring parts of his firm, his consulting arm in particular, and said he'd been looking for someone trustworthy, steady, and precise. His words. Then he offered me the anchor client position for the new branch he was opening. No interview, no probation, just trust. I paused. You're sure? I don't offer favors, he said. I make investments. And that was that. Megan's father became my first official client under the LLC I'd only just filed paperwork for a month prior. The irony was sharp. The man who raised her now placing his confidence in me. The man she discarded. But that wasn't even the biggest twist. Later that week, I got another call. This time from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't pick up. Hi, is this Andrew? The woman asked, her voice tight. Yes. Who is this? My name's Claire. I think we need to talk. She explained, slowly, that she was the wife of Megan's lover, his actual wife. She'd found one of Megan's earrings in their car, of all things. At first, she thought it was from a coworker. Then she started digging. Corporate cards, hotel bookings, a work trip to Vancouver that didn't show up on his official calendar. She started tracing his expenses and ended up uncovering an entire secondary relationship. My wife. Or ex-wife soon enough. Claire wasn't angry at me. She was composed, collected. I could tell she'd been sitting on this call for days, maybe weeks. She said she'd already contacted her company's HR department and that her husband was now under investigation for misusing corporate funds. Just thought you deserved to know, she said. You're not alone in this. I thanked her, genuinely, and then I realized what had just happened. Megan wasn't just unraveling our marriage. She was unraveling herself. The dominoes were falling. Her social circle began to shrink. I heard through mutual contacts that she'd been uninvited from 2 upcoming weddings. Couples she'd once helped plan. Her coworkers stopped liking her posts. A few unfollowed her altogether. And the messages from her? They kept coming. Can we please talk? This isn't who I am. You were everything to me. You don't just throw people away. I messed up, but I'm still me. No, she wasn't. Or maybe this was her all along. And I was the one who had built a version of her in my head that didn't exist. Either way, I wasn't answering. She already knew what my silence meant. Thomas offered me a role in his asset restructuring, quiet trust where words failed. At the same time, Megan's affair surfaced publicly. Her lover's wife launched an HR probe, and mutual friends began distancing. Megan scrambled to explain, but her stories kept changing. People noticed. Her image cracked. I said nothing. The truth had momentum now, and all I had to do was step aside and let it carry her. I rebuilt from 05 a.m. Alarms, fitness, strategy, silence. I launched my own firm, filled my calendar with clarity, scrubbed reminders of her from my life. I kept the ring in a drawer not as a symbol but as a sealed case file. She became noise I no longer heard. What once felt like ruin became discipline. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Just growth. And that box of memories? Still closed. Always will be.